I'm Sal.
I'm Beth.
We're the Brewery Lovers, and we're very happy to have with us today Julia Herz, the new executive director of the American Homebrewers Association in Boulder, Colorado. Welcome, Julia.
Hi, welcome back and great to spend time with you both.
It's so nice of you to do this. We really appreciate you taking the time. We know you must be busy.
Well, it has been busy, hit the ground running, getting started in this new role, but there's always time for beer, right?
There's always time for beer.
Yeah.
So congratulations, first of all. And then Beth wants to tell you how much she loves craftbeer.com.
When I found that website, it opened a whole new door. The styles, we read the BJCP book, and it's great. It's very informative. It's very detailed. But I went on your site and I could see it all. And that made such a difference. So thank you so much for that, for the map, the brewery finder. There's so much good material on that website that I am just very grateful that it's there. Thank you so much.
Wonderful job.
Love it.
And that map is going to really come in handy because we're shortly this spring, hopefully, going to hit the road, and we're going to try to hit as many breweries as we can in the lower 48. So we're going to be on that map quite often, I would imagine.
Yeah, what a amazing way to tour beer. And I applaud you both as a fellow traveler who took my camper last year, kind of COVID cautious style, and camped at, in friends' driveways or in brewery parking lots. And I love travel and I love beer. So I admire what you're getting ready to gear up to do.
Yeah, we're kindred spirits in that
Yes.
case. It's exactly what we're going to be doing.
Right. Yep.
So without dwelling on the pandemic, did you find homebrewing experience a resurgence the way baking and cooking did during the lockdown?
I discovered a lot during the pandemic, like we all did. And I love that you bring up baking. I did add for the first time, a sourdough starter that was given to me by a friend. So kind of that friendship bread thing, and working with yeast is just the best. It's sensory. You get aromas, you get visual and whatnot. And, my home brewing took kind of a little bit of a hiatus, and I am way due. I've got 2 batches in the mix for December, and I kind of feel like we're still in the pandemic. So if it counts, for December, I'll be brewing a recipe to honor Charlie Papazian, one of the original founders of the American Homebrewers Association, along with Charlie Matson. And Charlie lives 15 minutes out this window from me, which is amazing. And I have had Creekside, where his home is, with his incredible wife, Sandra. The beer that he's brewed, it's a hoppy Pilsner, and it has been published in Zymergy magazine, which is the magazine you get if you're an American Homebrewers Association. So I'm gonna brew that in December. Super psyched to brew that. And then Brave Noise is a amazing beer. We can talk about that in a moment, but that's also on my list, and I have the copy of the recipe. And the best way to brew is to start with the recipe and then get to the shop or ship your ingredients and get going. But until you have that recipe, you can't start. And I've got 2 that I'm really jazzed to brew.
And how's Charlie?
Charlie seems great. Talked to him, from the news of this announcement, acknowledging that I follow in his footsteps, the footsteps of Gary Glass, who was the American Homebrewers Association for 20 years prior to me, and, several other key people. And Charlie was nothing but supportive and positive, and I can't wait to use him as a sounding board to help, use his experience in mind to continue to further the movement that he really helped start in the U.S.
He's a wonderful guy, and he's responsible for most of us of a certain age becoming homebrewers, me included.
Right. And right, Sal, the others that, follow, whether you read Joy or have Joy of Homebrewing, Charlie's amazing homebrewing book, which is how I started, or, John Palmer's How to Brew nowadays, or both. And there's so many other great books out there. All the work that you do today for anything, if it's done right, it's legacy work, and it benefits generationally down the line. So I'm excited to have my toe in the water contributing in that way. And yet, the moment of now is the best moment. And I love being in this space of what the beer world is going through is very refreshing, and what the beer world has going on homebrewing wise is extremely exciting. It's there will a lot of where a lot of innovation comes from. A lot of brewers that tinker, they didn't just tinker on their pilot system, they tinkered at home in the kitchen. And I've come up with some random recipes being a home brewer that, happy accidents. So I just love the innovation and experimentation that we all get to be a part of too.
So you just hinted at it. I've said for years that the craft beer industry basically was born in homebrewing. Would you agree with that statement?
Oh yeah. That in the US, right? I mean, in 1978, there were less than 100 brewing companies in the United States. And then homebrewing became legalized, up to 200 US gallons per year. Jimmy Carter signed that into law.
Mhm.
And, people like Charlie Papazian and others helped get that to be legalized. And by doing that, then you had an explosion almost of experimentation in the kitchen that led a lot of brewers that maybe had been influenced by European travel or European beer styles to actually comfortably and legally brew it in their home. And then you had a lot of home brewers that, grew up and created their breweries, including, Jim Cook's family, his recipe for Sam Adams Boston Lager was a homebrew recipe back 5 generations. Ken Grossman, they had a homebrew shop for Sierra Nevada's business model in the beginning and in Chico, and then they became a brewery. So you've got just so much tied back to homebrewing that really gives back to craft brewing and still to this day. And so I think that's some of the fun too, is let's get at some of those stories and continue to share where homebrewers are contributing to what we see commercially available as well.
So for someone who's never done it or even considered it, the question is why brew, especially now, because you can buy anything. I mean, the other day we had to get a braggot. We needed a blueberry braggot for a beer tasting that we were involved in at the University of Pennsylvania. And I mean, Grisette, you can get Radler, you can get rock beer, you can get Berliner Weiss is everywhere now. I know why I keep doing it, because I like it. I enjoy the challenge. It's still a lot less expensive to make your own beer. But I want to hear your opinion of that. Why brew for someone who didn't even know you could brew at home?
Right. There's so many reasons. Some tie to sensory, some tie to community. I'll kind of go with the sensory, lead with that first. It puts me in touch with the source of the ingredients. It gives me, week in and week out enjoyment. There's nothing better than having your favorite t-shirt on a carboy that you covered it with so you don't want it to get light struck, and it's bubbling in your, bedroom because that's the warmest place in the house, and you smell it and you see it. And that is, I call it immaculate fermentation, right? It's not immaculate conception. It's the universe, inoculating yeast sometimes in a wild way, or you are deliberately putting yeast into a sugar mixture of wort, and then you get beer. And often when you get that, you start to not just on the cooking side tweak your recipes, but you want to tweak your brewing recipes. And then on the community side, you try it. You're your probably worst audience for taste and biggest critic, most critical. And then you share it with others, and that brings people closer to you. That gets a moment to happen that might not have happened. Beer relaxes us. It's a social lubricant. Next thing you know, I'm making my neighbors feel, happy and thought of because I took the time to want their attention to my homebrew and their feedback. And it's this connection that goes, back and forth, keg to keg or bottle to bottle or can to can, glass to glass, that you can't replace. It's the same, but not the same when you buy a 6-pack, which is amazing, world-class craft beer everywhere, and you bring it to your neighbor's, porch or patio and have a beer with them. Then on top of that, put that I brewed this, and you're taking the conversation to a whole nother level.
Yeah, very well said. Go ahead.
I like that you said that you ferment in the bedroom, which we do, which gives me the opportunity to check the airlock. First thing I do in the morning when I get up, got to see if it's still bubbling.
Right,
Where
it's
we're staying
alive.
Where we're staying right now, the bedroom closet is the coolest place in the house. This house tends to be very warm, so we can get it around 60 in the bedroom closet, and that's why we're there. I started brewing in a closet for the same reason, because it was a perfect temperature.
Yep.
Yeah, in our first house. So you started brewing in 91. correct that it was a Scotch ale?
Yes, you must have looked at my brewing resume. Yes, yes.
My information is correct. Okay, what did you think of that beer?
It was the best thing I'd ever tasted. It was, and we shared it with friends. And I remember while we brewed it, we think we put too much corn sugar in it because it was overcarbonated, but that didn't affect the flavor too much. I remember we had sterilization concerns because a spoon had fallen into the fermentation bucket before we got to seal it up and put the airlock on. But it all worked out, even though my friend Charlie, put his hand into the bucket to get the spoon out. So when we bottled it and it actually had carbonation and handed it to friends, and hear that pop, that fizz, and pour it in the glass, the glug glug, see that collar of foam, the dark development of rust and red hues from the roasted malts in that Scottish ale. We were blown away. It was great. I loved it.
That's a great story. And I dropped a cookbook in the fermenter once.
That's even better.
I was using the cookbook to prop up the bucket, to get their last drop of beer out, and down it went. But I still have that cookbook, as a matter of fact.
Funny.
So I want to ask you about before that. In '91, that was a time where you rarely saw a woman in the homebrew supply store. Fortunately, that's changing, and we do run into them on occasion now. We don't live in the city. I think if we lived in the city, we would find even more women brewing. But how did you get to the point of wanting to make your own beer in 1991?
Gender doesn't occur to a young woman like me when all she's interested in doing is doing what any other male or woman might want to do too. And I had my eye on homebrewing since I had been little, because before I was 10 and I grew up in the Washington, D.C., Maryland area, my parents would take us to support my brother's beer can collection to the Brickskeller. And at the time, and the Brickskeller's no longer around, but it was more than 500 beers on the menu and none were draft. It was bottles and cans. And so we'd go out on a family outing every couple of months. My parents would have a few beers and be really, in a good mood. They would have the beer with food, and then my brother would be in a good mood because he was getting, one of those collectibles that he might not be able to find otherwise. And so before I was 10, I was thinking about beer and like different packages, different types, different stories from different producers. And so I always wanted to homebrew from that. And then when I was 21, I was confident to then go buy that homebrew kit at a store. I don't remember where we bought it. But me and my friend Charlie just, went for it. So it had nothing to do with gender to me or needing to be inspired by anyone else. It was more, this just makes sense. This looks like fun, and I can actually do it legally and get the ingredients. I'm going to go for it.
Well, you answered the question succinctly when you said my parents used to take me to the Brickskeller. You had a major education in craft beer at an early age. That's awesome.
It was super fun in those days to, find the Sierra Nevadas, the Red Tail Ales, the Anchor Steams, the beers that now have been kind of the heritage beers that we all think about. And the imports now, it's tipped the scales where specialty imports are still, you all can tell me what you drink and enjoy. But American craft brewers have really brought it onto the scene where I don't just have to purchase, a Duvel if I want a certain style, right? I don't just have to, get a Paulaner if I want a Doppelbock. I can get versions of those locally as well and calibrate against the amazing heritage beers that really establish the styles in the first place.
Well, what's funny about you mentioning that is that we flipped recently because we're studying for the BJCP.
Awesome.
So we're buying the commercial examples. I've got a rock beer down there now. We did the Eyinger Doppelbock or Double Weizen, I forget. So we're going through beer styles that we normally never drink, number one. And we're buying commercial examples because we want to kind of learn it by the book.
Yeah,
so
you said calibrate is the
that's
perfect word.
That's a perfect word, calibrate.
Yeah, and the Beer Judge Certification Program lists, and so does craftbeer.com, as a matter of fact, commercial examples that are world-class of styles. And so if you want beer style study, you do want to go to those commercial examples, hopefully presented as fresh as possible. It's always a crapshoot with some of the imports. So you can taste, not just read, but taste.
Yeah, it was weird because one of the first beers we did this with was Yuengling Lager. Mm-hmm. Yuengling traditional lager. Yuengling is a Pennsylvania brewery. It's one of the oldest in North America, and it's big around here. We're in the Philadelphia area, and it always puzzled me that Yingling didn't look or taste like any other sort of regular American light beer. And that's because it's not. It's international amber, right? It's the same as Dos Equis.
Yeah.
Like, I never knew that. And I never would have known that had I not done this BJCP exercise. So it's really been a wonderful experience. And we're hoping that we pass. The exam is next month. So wish us luck.
Best of luck and more power to you. It really is an honorable, noble test. I've tested into it and certified on BJCP level and advanced on Cicerone level. And the beer studies are the journey, right? Getting the certifications, icing on the cake. But going into the depths of I am studying for one of those two tests is really where a lot of the magic happens. So I wish you the best. And every time you're studying, I hope you enjoy it. Enjoy every minute of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. What's your impression? What we were mentioning before is you can buy almost anything right now. When you go to a restaurant, there's craft beer on the menu. We went to a little nondescript gas station. I don't even remember where we were. And there was a growler bar in the gas station. I'm like, where am I? We're not in Kansas anymore. And you played a role in that. With your book, we want to ask you about the book. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to get it because this interview came together so quickly.
But it might make a really good Christmas present.
Yes. So tell us about the book, who you wrote it for, and tell us your impressions of how crazy it is compared to 1978, 1980, 1990.
Right. I mean, and on the last part of that, because the craft beer revolution has taken hold and now been so strong, it's inspired other countries to advance their brewing game too, and not just brew traditional styles or classic styles. Book, Beer Pairing, that's the name of it. I co-authored it with Gwen Conley. I do believe it's the book where in 7 years' time, which is about how long it took to get through the process of learning enough and writing it and publishing it, that there's not a lot out there that's reliable and relatable on pairing. It's very wine centric. And so Beer Pairing, I think it stands in the class of some of the top few beer books that are out there to educate us on the approach to pairing, right? Complement, contrast, cut, and cleanse. What are interactions? And what, how do we discern them? How do we describe what we're tasting? And I talk about when you pair that, I could say to you, that's a home run, right? And at least then to me that that's like top of the list. 1 + 1 = 5. Beer made the food better. Food made the beer better. Or I say it's middle of the road, right? And that might mean that, neither makes each other better or worse, and yet it was still pleasing. So the way to communicate pairing, I think, is key. And whether you're at home doing it or you're doing it on the professional level, there's a lot of need for more information on what goes on with the sense that beer can really go where just wine simply can't. Sweet comes heat, higher residual sugar, final gravities in beers will balance capsaicin heat and calm it. And so that's a huge attribute of most beer styles compared to most wine styles, which are much more dry. Wine kind of hangs its hat on pairing with the acidity. Well, majority of beer styles also are obviously on the pH scale and have levels of acidity, and some are acidic centric or sour in their flavor profile, and so they really help calm salt and fat in foods and get other flavors to shine and pop more. So there's a lot of concepts in the beer pairing book, some of what I just riffed on, and I'm very proud of that book, and it's a great resource to use if you're out there looking to learn about pairing in one concise book.
Yeah, well done, and congratulations. Did you write it for professionals more than sort of amateur cooks and foodies?
Yep. So we did we lessened it. We wanted it even more geeky. But the editor at Quarto, they encouraged us to go a little bit more accessible, yet with in mind for the beverage and hospitality professional, the beer educator, or the brewer and the chef. That's definitely, to me, who the perfect core audience is for that, or the home, inspiring foodie. That's another great group of people that should be on the list that should consider it.
I'll tell you a funny story. We were researching oysters and stout because I was writing a piece about it, And this was a long time ago when all you could get was Guinness and Murphy's. And we were, doing it, and we were doing recipes and cooking. And in the course of this research, Beth was making chocolate chip cookies. She does it all the time. And I grabbed a warm chocolate chip cookie from the cooling rack and washed it down with Guinness, probably from the draft can. I think there was draft cans then. And I was like, oh my God, that was so much better than the oysters and stout. It was undescribably perfect.
The beer and the roasted malts, and going to some of those like chocolate flavors, they're really going to fall into the chocolate chips in those cookies. And then, the actual malt in the beer is going to really marry and have good interaction in bridges or echoes and links to the pale malt in the beer, to the actual cookie dough, right? There's a lot of flavor profile in that cookie dough. And because you baked it, you've got these kind of advanced, more not just kilned malt flavors, but getting more towards maybe roasted malt flavors, depending on how crunchy the cookie got. So that, beer and bread, frankly, grilled, roasted, smoked, and baked foods go so well with beer, because the base fermentable malted grains, are exposed, kilned to kilned and roasted malts and higher heats. And so I know your audience is, a little bit more advanced, so we can kind of geek out here, but that one cookie has a lot of examples of why beer pairing works. That right there, there's a lot to riff on there and a lot to love.
I'm glad I mentioned it to you, because I gave you the opportunity to explain it to us. That was awesome.
Well, and we all know what we like. No, you're never wrong in what you like to sip, right? So that the key is how do we all explain it? That's the hardest part. I call it the mind to palate connection. The palate factually tastes. It factually is perceiving anything presented to it. And the mind has to apply lexicon and a story, frankly. And sometimes the mind has bias. Sometimes the mind is closed-minded. Sometimes the mind is confused because there's flavors presented that you've never had in the first place. So I think when you try to describe something, you do yourself the best service if you remove preconceived bias of, hey, when I was little, I didn't like that aroma or flavor. And you just try to learn what you are factually perceiving. And then you can get a lot more enjoyment out of a lot more things.
And that's really why we pursued the BJCP certification, because we've been doing this YouTube video channel, and I found myself not being able to successfully articulate what I was tasting.
I so relate. In my journey, first time I sat for Cicerone, besides the online certified beer server, I did pass that first, but I didn't pass certified Cicerone first time. I didn't pass advanced Cicerone first time. BJCP, I wasn't certified BJCP out of the gates. First, I was recognized. That's the one, like I was able to meet that minimum benchmark, and then I kept studying and I had a better sense of what it was all about. So it's all just baby steps, and one step at a time is the way to go. And yeah, you get it. And you just hope for the best, forget the rest, do your best, forget the rest. And in the meantime, you're drinking great beers, you're learning more, you're expanding your career, your hobby, or whatever.
The other half of my question was, because I think you were a big part of this. How do you feel about when you go to a little restaurant that you wouldn't expect to have craft beer and they have some, or that gas station that had a growler? That blew my mind. That little gas station.
Yeah, right. I feel great about it. I think the marketplace, will decide what's best, what sticks around, what brands need to go. I do think that, people should be forgiving for any brewery that's had its doors open for less than 3 months or whatever. Like, they're new, right? They're scaling up maybe a 5-gallon homebrew recipe batch to a 7-barrel system. Give them a few months to tweak it. That's a big change for any recipe. So I feel very excited about it. I'm amazed. U.S. craft brewers are, frankly, they changed the foodie world.
Yeah, it's good. It's really an incredible time to be a beer lover right now.
Yeah, it really is. And so the sky's the limit. Things are harder for craft brewers than ever, always, but it's super awesome to go down the street. I can go to Left Hand out my window, 20 minutes. Oscar Blues, the original Oscar Blues that started it all, and the canning kind of whole movement for craft brewers is 5 minutes out my window that way. I can go a little further, go to Main Stage Brewing, which is just a small little microbrewery in Lyons. I can go to City Star Brewing out of Berthoud, which is just a couple and a nano brewery system. So you can go just so many great breweries, more advanced producing or smaller. And the best brewery often, sometimes is in your kitchen too. So don't forget about the home brewing piece.
Yeah, we have 2 conditioning right now. We're not drinking homebrew right now because they're both
No.
conditioning. We have a Citrus Smash.
No,
and
it's Galaxy
Oh,
Smash.
sorry, Galaxy Smash and a ESB. The ESB I'm really looking forward to. We haven't done an ESB in years, and that's
I love it.
and now our brewing skills are so much better than the last time we did one. So I think that one's going to be good.
That's
Was that
great.
a cat?
I think it was a dog.
Was it a
went
dog
by.
or a cat that we saw go by?
Oh, dog.
What's his name?
Bandit.
Okay.
Yep.
What were you going to say about our ESB? I interrupted you.
Oh, I was just going to ask, do you then keg it or bottle it? How do you serve it?
Yeah, we haven't bottled in years because we actually brew with another family, and we can do as much as 2 barrels. We usually only do 1 because it doesn't tax the system as much. So yeah, we only bottle if it's something really unusual. Like Beth and Barbara, my brewing partner's wife, wanted chili pepper rock beer one time. So that went in bottles because it was just a little bit unusual. But normally we keg everything.
Keeps things fresh. I love it.
And we can add movie star to your curriculum vitae.
Yeah,
Beer,
it
a love
smells
story.
good.
You're in the trailer. It's exciting. What was that experience like?
So yeah, thanks. You just brought up Beer Movie, Beer a Love Story. It's beermovie.org is where you can view it. Frederick Mosier, preeminent, amazing director and producer and writer with another group of people on his team, really brought one of the best movies behind beer to life. This movie was shot in 7 countries, shot in 4D, surround sound capabilities. Like, it's beautiful photography, cinematography on the beverage of beer in multiple countries. And they came to the US. And the scenes I'm in, one, I'm in my office in Boulder talking on behalf of craft brewers, and they feature the Small and Independent Craft Brewer Seal. Another, I'm in Washington, D.C., drinking with Greg Ingert of Church Key and Birch and Barley, an amazing retailer. And that was just fun to geek out. And then the last one, the best, most fun scene is I'm homebrewing out the patio that way a minute. And we made it was supposed to be a Baltic Porter, but ended up, I'm calling it a choke cherry Baltic Red. We put choke cherries in it, and I didn't have enough roasted malts. I must have gotten distracted in the homebrew shop or something. And so it was more of a red, not a porter, but a beautiful beer. And I got to co-brew that with a professional brewer who they had brought in from Vienna. So super amazing story for me. And like geek out experience, and the movie itself, like, really rewarding. If you want a cerebral approach to beer in your entertainment, give this movie some time to watch it. It's just a very rewarding one, and the way it showcases beer is how many of us already think about it. And I would love to see more of that stuff out there.
That's fantastic. We only just found out about it prepping for this interview, so we haven't watched it yet, but it's on our list.
Excellent.
So you are going to brew a Brave Noise, and I did want to ask you about the whole harassment and equal rights movement that sort of hit the industry this past summer. I hope it will cause real change and not be a blip. What's your feeling on that?
Well, I think that the change has already occurred, at least in the ability to discuss the topic of bias and discrimination and harassment within beverage alcohol. The movement really got spurred on May 11th of this year. Brienne Allen is the woman formerly of Brewing of Notch Brewing, and now she's got such a good thing going with this important message and movement that she's now more focused on this. So she one day, though, showed up at Notch Brewing and was discriminated against, as of any other day that she often experienced, of like, what are you doing here? And she's like, I'm head of production. What do you mean? This is the place I work. Why are you acting that way? And that just was the tip of the iceberg. And then many women shared on Instagram true upsetting stories that all women, frankly, we've heard about it for years, but we've allowed it to just kind of circulate in the ether. And so it's now time to back each other up better, be more empowered to speak on our own behalf. And I think that change is what we're seeing. We'll see what sticks. We've seen certain people no longer have their jobs over this movement and situation. And so one of the extensions of that to keep it top of mind is brewing a beer that Brienne contributed to, another woman, Ash Elliott, and Jen Blair. And they have a homebrew recipe version of what they call Brave Noise. It's a pale ale. And there goes my dog. And there's a commercial version of that brewery beer too. And you're seeing brewers make that and devote time and resources and sometimes and even funds to get the kind of refreshing reckoning to be top of mind more.
Yeah, it's kind of a horrible story that I hope has a happy ending and that we're going to see real change. And
Yeah.
I was also happy to hear Brienne has moved to HR, which is where probably she needs to be. It's perfect.
Yeah, big changes. We'll see what's more to come from that group and from breweries and people in this space for sure.
Last question for someone who's not yet a member of the Homebrewers Association: why should they join? Here's your
I'm
chance.
so glad you asked.
Here's your chance to give your pitch.
Absolutely. First of all, American Homebrewers Association brings world-class resources to you minute by minute, day by day, 365 days a year to homebrew and to homebrew with the most accessible resources for beer beginners and beer geeks. So it's a no-brainer. Right now during the holidays, kind of concept is give the gift of homebrewing, right? You can get a free book if you sign somebody up for a membership. And that's a great way to give to others that you think might be interested in homebrewing. And then you're immediately plugged into a community of 30,000 plus people and all the recipes, clone recipes, National Homebrew Competition award-winning gold medal recipes. You get Zymergy every other month in your mailbox or digitally. And less than $50, you get your money back in spades. There's 2,000 plus discounts that you can get at member deals across the country at retailers and breweries. So it really pays for itself, and it also helps nurture your itch, scratch the itch to get homebrewing again, because it keeps reminding you of all the great things you can do.
Well said. Well, we're
All
members.
right.
I'm talking to my viewers now. We're members. You should be too.
That's so
Do you
wonderful.
have any other questions? And I know you don't have a crystal ball, but Homebrew Con, Pittsburgh, June, right?
Correct. End of June.
Are you optimistic for
Very
for
optimistic.
gathering?
Very optimistic, planning on it, and also National Homebrew Competition with entries for that opening in March. And so it's important that you want to gather, plan on coming to Pittsburgh and hanging out with us. It'd be so amazing finally to be in person for this. And you want your beer judged by the preeminent homebrewing judge pool, in major competition for homebrewing in the world, then enter the National Homebrew Competition as well.
Outstanding. Well, again, Julia, we can't thank you enough. We really appreciate taking the time and break a leg with your new position. And we're so happy that you're there, and we're happy to meet you.
I so appreciate both of you. Good luck on your journeys. And if you're in Colorado, let me know, and I'd love to be a pit stop.
Or maybe we'll see you in Pittsburgh.
Yes, let's plan on that no matter what. And so it'll be good to talk again.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Great. Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
All right. Be well. Thanks you.
Thank
Bye.
you.